The moment Ethan Carter realized the table number was wrong, his first instinct was to stand up and leave before the awkwardness could turn into pity, because pity was something he had learned to recognize from a mile away, ever since life had hollowed him out and left him standing alone with 3 identical little boys and a calendar full of responsibilities that never slept. He had come to the cafe for a quiet meal after work, not for whatever destiny was about to unfold under the warm hanging lights and the faint smell of roasted coffee beans, and yet his heart began pounding as if it somehow knew that this mistake was not a mistake at all. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet miracles that show up when you least expect them, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world in ways nothing else can. Ethan had been a single father for 4 years, though the word single never captured the full weight of what he carried. He was a systems analyst by day, a cook, cleaner, nurse, teacher, and emotional anchor by night, and the father of triplets meant his life ran on routines tighter than any corporate deadline. Liam, Noah, and Owen were 7 years old, endlessly curious, wildly different in personality despite sharing the same face, and fiercely protective of their dad in a way that sometimes broke him open when he least expected it. Their mother, Rachel, had passed away suddenly from a brain aneurysm, leaving behind a house full of half-finished dreams and a man who learned how to keep breathing for the sake of 3 small hearts that depended on him. The cafe was one of the few places Ethan allowed himself to exist as just a man and not a survival machine. It was close to the office, familiar, and safe. He had chosen table 12, near the window, because it faced the street and gave him the comforting illusion of watching life pass by without demanding anything from him. When he sat down, ordered coffee, and checked his phone for the usual flood of school reminders and grocery lists, he did not notice the quiet choreography happening across town, where 3 small boys with serious expressions and crayon-stained fingers were executing the boldest plan of their young lives. Liam had been the strategist, Noah the emotional persuader, and Owen the silent observer who noticed everything adults missed. They had watched their father slowly fold inward over the years, smiling for them, working himself thin, never complaining, but never laughing the way he used to in old videos. They heard the way other parents talked about dates and weekends and companionship, and they noticed how Ethan's eyes softened whenever their teacher, Grace Miller, spoke to him at school events. Grace was kind in a way that felt steady, not loud. She had lost her fiancé years earlier in a car accident, and though she carried her grief gracefully, the boys sensed something familiar in her quiet strength. Grace worked in the same building as Ethan now, having recently transferred schools and taken a part-time curriculum role that put her on the same floor. Their conversations were polite, careful, and filled with unspoken pauses that neither of them knew how to cross. So the boys decided to cross them for them. Grace had arrived at the cafe moments after Ethan, her coat still clinging to the cool air outside. She spotted him, hesitated, and then approached with an apologetic smile that carried more warmth than the room itself. Ethan looked up, confused, and for a second he truly believed she had mistaken his table for someone else's. He was already preparing an excuse to leave, because his life had trained him to retreat before things could hurt. But Grace sat down, and something in her eyes told him this was not an accident. His stomach tightened with uncertainty, with the old fear of hoping too much. He thought of his boys at home, probably arguing over homework, probably missing their mom in the quiet way children do when they think no one is watching. He thought of how long it had been since someone had looked at him like he was more than a task list. As they sat there, time slowed into something almost tender. They talked about work, about how exhausting and beautiful children could be, about loss without naming it directly, and about the strange way life rerouted people without asking permission. Ethan felt himself opening in small, careful increments, like a door that had been rusted shut but was finally remembering its purpose. Grace listened with the kind of attention that made silence feel safe instead of awkward, and for the first time in years, Ethan did not feel like he had to perform strength. What Ethan did not know yet was that the boys had used his phone earlier that week while he was cooking dinner, sending a message he would not see until later. What Grace did not know was that her calendar invite had been nudged by 3 determined children who believed their father deserved happiness. And what neither of them knew was how deeply that evening would change the shape of their lives. At home, the triplets waited with the patience of people who believed completely in their plan. They had set the table for dinner themselves, a crooked arrangement of plates and mismatched forks, because they wanted the house to feel ready for something new. They talked about their dad in the way children do when they love someone fiercely, assuming the world would surely meet that love halfway. Back at the cafe, Ethan laughed, genuinely laughed, at something Grace said about spilled paint and stubborn students, and the sound startled him. It felt like rediscovering a part of himself he had buried to survive. The evening stretched longer than either of them expected, and when they finally stood to leave, there was no rush, no pressure, just a quiet acknowledgement that something important had begun. The real test came days later, when Ethan found the message on his phone, sent from his own account, explaining everything in the innocent, heartfelt language only children could use. He sat on the edge of his bed that night, the house quiet, the boys asleep, and cried in a way he had not allowed himself to in years. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that his children had been watching him, loving him, and believing in his future even when he could not. Grace, too, discovered the truth through a drawing left on her desk, a picture of her holding hands with a tall man and 3 small figures standing proudly beside them. She pressed the paper to her chest, feeling something inside her loosen, something that had been clenched since the day she lost the man she thought she would marry. She understood then that love did not replace what was lost, but expanded around it. When Ethan and Grace talked about it later, there was embarrassment, yes, but more than that there was gratitude. Gratitude for children brave enough to hope, for timing that felt almost orchestrated, and for the courage to try again even when the past still echoed loudly. Grace began spending more time at the house, helping with homework, joining dinners, becoming part of the rhythm without forcing herself into it. The boys accepted her not because she tried to be their mother, but because she honored the one they had lost while showing up fully as herself. Ethan struggled with guilt at first, feeling as though happiness was a betrayal of grief. But he learned that love was not a finite resource. His boys did not need him to be lonely to remember their mother. They needed him to be alive. Slowly, the house filled with laughter again, not replacing the old memories, but layering new ones on top. Months passed, seasons changed, and the cafe became a place they returned to often, always sitting at table 12. It became a symbol of how easily life could change when people stopped assuming they had missed their chance. Ethan grew lighter, Grace grew steadier, and the boys grew proud of what they had helped create, carrying the secret like a shared miracle. Just before the ending, please comment and tell us what you think the triplets felt in their hearts when they decided to bring 2 broken adults together, because your thoughts matter and they bring this story to life. Near the end of the school year, there was a small ceremony where parents were invited to watch their children perform. Ethan sat in the audience with Grace beside him, the boys on stage, their eyes scanning the crowd until they found him. In that moment, Ethan understood that love was not about avoiding pain, but about choosing connection anyway. His life had not become easier, but it had become fuller, and that fullness made all the difference. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in unexpected love, and subscribe to the channel, because every interaction helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. Ethan no longer wondered if the table had been wrong, because he finally understood that sometimes the most important moments arrive disguised as mistakes, and sometimes children, with their fearless hope, see the future more clearly than adults ever could.